All right, here we go with the conclusion. Uh, this goes from paragraphs 447 down to the end, which is 451 2. Um, so all of this is basically taking place in Gabriel's mind. If you were looking at this from the outside, there would be very little to describe in the room. Greta is fast asleep on the bed. Gabriel is leaning on his elbow. At one point, he gets up and moves, but really, everything else that's happening here in this epiphany is happening inside of him. So, I am giving this its own screencast just because I want you to pay careful attention to what's happening here with this epiphany. Okay, so he looks on her unresentfully. Oh, that's awfully sweet of him. Clearly, he had resented so much about how this evening went. This evening was supposed to be a triumph for him, and instead, he feels like he's been punished by some vindictive force that's out to make sure he doesn't get any action on after his Christmas party. So he listens to her. He recalls now and reflects on the fact that she had that romance. A man had died for her sake. Notice this next line. It hardly pained him now to think how poor a part he, her husband, had played in her life. Notice that expression. It hardly pained him now. Notice the implication there that it did pain him once. And it still pains him now, though hardly, right? But what he's acknowledging here is what a small part he's played in her life. He's her husband. And he feels like, as he's watching her sleep, as though she had never lived together with him as man, and the two of them had never lived together as man and wife. Remember that line we saw in the chronology, which is actually just this next page here. I'll just flip it over and show you. When Joyce describes life in Ireland, he says, there is no life, no naturalness or honesty. People live together in the same houses all their lives, and at the end they are as far apart as ever. That is this moment in The Dead. Gabriel and Greta have lived their entire lives together in the same house, and they are as far apart as ever. They don't really know each other. He doesn't really know her. And he thinks about what his wife was like then. In her girlish beauty, a strange, friendly pity for her, entered his soul. Notice the friendly pity. I mean, that's one thing, and pity does sound a little bit condescending, but it could also be tender. But notice that it's strange to him. It's not something that he's used to saying or feeling towards her. He acknowledges her aging. He says that he didn't like to say that, even to himself, that her face was no longer beautiful, but he knew it was no longer the face for which Michael Fury had braved death. Okay, he knows that, and a lot of this final epiphany, guys, is about recognition of death and mortality, and we see that right here. And now look at his turn. Perhaps she had not told him all the story. He's wondering again, right? Did I get it all? Was there more to it? Was there more I should be jealous of? Okay, and he thinks about the clothes strewn over the chair. He reflects on the riot of his emotions from an hour before, and all his emotions had proceeded from his own, the supper, his own foolish speech, the wine and dancing, the merrymaking, the good night, the walk. And notice, now all of a sudden the language of the shades comes in. Poor Aunt Julia, my poor beloved aunt. She too would soon be a shade, with the shade of Patrick Morkan and his horse. Okay? He saw that look on her face, um, and that's how she will soon be in death. He would be in the drawing room, dressed in black, mourning his Aunt Julia. The blinds would be drawn, and Aunt Kate would be sitting there, crying and blowing him her nose. He would look for some words that might console her, and would only find lame and useless ones. That would happen soon. So he starts thinking about his beloved aunt's death. And now the air of the room chilled his shoulders. So once again, we have this movement between what's outside and what's inside. What's outside is Gabriel notices clothes on the floor and on the chair. What's inside is the thoughts of death. Now we go back outside, the room, in the air in the room. And now he goes and lays down next to her in bed. He does so cautiously, right? Maybe not to wake her, not to disturb her. One by one, they were all becoming shades. Notice, like, the thoughts of mortality and death are overwhelming him. It's better to pass boldly into that other world in the full glory of some passion than fade and wither dismally with age. Think about what that refers to. I mean, who has passed boldly into that other world? It's Michael Fury, right? It's the one who gave himself, loved deeply. And it's Gabriel who's the one who's faded and withered with age. And he thinks about how his wife locked in her heart for so many years that image of her lover's eyes when he told her that he did not wish to live. And now Gabriel starts to cry. He's lying there beside his wife, and he starts to cry. And he realizes that he had never felt like that himself toward any woman, but he knew that such a feeling must be love, right? So part of his epiphany is that he's never known love. He's not known it towards his wife. He's not known it towards any other woman. And he starts to think, where are these tears coming from? A place of sadness, a place of regret. And now he imagines himself seeing the form of a young man. Notice in a paragraph earlier it was the shade. Now we're talking about forms were near. His soul had approached that region where dwell the vast hosts of the dead. He was conscious of but could not apprehend their wayward and flickering existence. His own identity was fading out into the gray, impalpable world. The solid world itself, which these dead had one time reared and lived in, was dissolving and dwindling. Notice what's happening here. We're getting this sort of blurring of boundaries between two worlds. The world of the dead and the world of the living. Okay? Some taps on the pane make him turn his head. It has begun to snow. Okay? He thinks about his journey westward. That can hold a lot of symbolic meaning there. The snow was general all over Ireland. Okay, so the snow is falling everywhere. And now listen to this beautiful conclusion. Snow was general all over Ireland. It was falling on every part of the dark central plain, on the treeless hills, falling softly upon the bog of Allen, and farther westward, softly falling into the dark, mutinous Shannon waves. It was falling, too, upon every part of the lonely churchyard on the hill where Michael Fury lay buried. It lay thickly drifted on the crooked crosses and headstones, on the spears of the little gate, on the barren thorns. His soul swooned slowly as he heard the snow falling faintly through the universe and faintly falling, like the descent of their last end upon all the living and the dead. What a beautiful close here. Gabriel has felt this blurring between the two worlds. He and his wife, to him, feel like they are all becoming shades. His Aunt Julia, all of them will soon be shades like Michael Fury. And this is now symbolized by a general snow that's falling all over Ireland. And think about what a snow does as it falls. It dampens all sound, it covers everything, it falls thickly, okay? And it's just falling. Look at the repetition here of falling faintly and faintly falling, right? That we have this idea of just how gently it's falling, and how in falling so gently and faintly, it's almost making this imperceptible sound. And it's going to be, to Gabriel in his mind, this is symbolizing what our last end will be, what it is our last descent, when all the souls fall. And the snow covers everyone. It covers everyone equally, the living and the dead, both those of us still walking the earth and those of us in the ground. So, wow, what an extraordinary few paragraphs there. All that's going in Gabriel's mind, his sense of his own mortality. And again, if you're seeing this from the outside, all you notice is a man leaning on his elbow and then going and lying in bed, and then tears welling up in his eyes. And finally, a man turning his head towards the window. There's everything else is happening inside. Okay, that was an extraordinary conclusion to this story. Beautiful moment. Please like this video and share it on Facebook. Wait, no, don't do that. Like it on YouTube and subscribe. Yeah, those are the things you should do. Thank you.